Hey everyone, welcome to the Sustain the Range podcast. I'm Lauren, your host, and this podcast is a personal exploration of my experiences in everything ranching. From beef operations to training horses to sustainable farming and regenerative practices, we'll cover it all. Each episode features enlightening conversations with guests who bring their unique perspectives and expertise. Whether they're seasoned ranchers or first-generation farmers, we all share a common bond and deep appreciation for the land and the livestock we raise. Tune in each week for engaging discussions, inspiring stories, and practical insights from the ranching community, and let's embark on this incredible journey together. Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Sustain the Range. In this episode, I sit down with Brittany Duffy, co-founder of Uncompahgre Farm, for a heartfelt conversation into the journey of sustainable ranching. We dive into the roots of her and her partner's operation, the joys and challenges of being first-generation ranchers, and environmental stewardship. We talk about their direct-to-consumer beef business, and we get into more personal topics such as mental health and what it means to be deeply connected to the land and the animals we steward. She offers some advice and encouragement for aspiring ranchers and ag enthusiasts and lessons that she has learned along the way. I truly enjoyed talking with Brittany, and I know you'll love this one. Let's dive in. Great. Well, thanks, Brittany, so much for taking the time to chat with me today. I'm so excited to have you on the podcast and for our listeners to kind of hear about your background and your experience in the ranch work that you're doing now. So welcome.
Thank you, Lauren. Thank you so much for having me. It's really great to be here.
Yeah. So I was so excited because I found you. I don't even really remember. I think it was probably, I don't know if it was through Instagram or something, but I just came across your website and I started reading it and I was like, wow, this is really, really cool. And everything that I'm into with all of that you guys are doing with, low stress stockmanship and your beef business and, caring for the land and stuff like that, which we'll get into a little bit. But I first just want to give you a chance to introduce yourself and, kind of tell us where you're from, what your background is, where you grew up and how you got into agriculture.
Sure. Thank you so much. Brittany Duffy. I'm from Miami, Florida originally. I grew up on a sailboat. So I'm a long way from home, but I think that people, you can't really help where you're born, but you can help where you spend your life. Like you can adjust that as you find the ecosystem that fits you. And for me, as a kid, I always, all my imagination games were farm oriented, as strange as that might sound. I was a kid who had a lot of goals and different ideas career-wise. I wanted to be a teacher, I wanted to join Peace Corps, I wanted to work for the Forest Service, and I wanted to farm. And I'm finally on that fourth one. Nice. And it's been an awesome journey. I've loved everything that I've done, and I see myself doing this. I think I needed all of those steps also to be where I am today.
Yeah, that's amazing. What was growing up on a sailboat like?
Oh,
I don't think I've ever met anybody who grew up on a sailboat. That's pretty cool.
Well, my dad built sailboats, and we lived on his first sailboat that he built as a teenager.
Wow.
So it's not a fancy yacht. We still have it in the family. She's a 30-footer. But my parents both loved sailing, and that was where we lived till they could eventually buy a house. And it was awesome. I really enjoyed it. The birds, there's the lap of the water on the boat. There's so many smells and sights and sounds that are just sunk into your subconscious about the sailing world. It's just
Yeah.
It was very enjoyable. I learned a lot.
Yeah, I'm sure. That's really cool.
My heart always longed for seasons and also forests, trees. And so have slowly but surely been making my way towards a life where I could be in that ecosystem that fits me.
Yeah, that's super cool. So yeah, just to kind of go forward with that a little bit, you've had a lot of experience, in other areas like working for the Forest Service and whatnot. So kind of talk about like maybe a 2 or 3 different career paths that you've had, like you mentioned, and then kind of what led you to start your farm and start the ranch.
So when I graduated college, I started teaching high school. As a kid, I'm the oldest of 4, and so I think there's just that big sister in me that is always not lecturing, but just I'm a teacher at heart, and I I had so many really influential teachers that changed who I am and made me into who I am, and so I always wanted to pay that forward. So I taught for 3 years in high school English, which was amazing. And then when I did my grad school with the Peace Corps, so you do your thesis research while you're doing your service in your country of service. And I taught grad school, and then I taught when I was in Nicaragua as well. I think my Peace Corps service in particular, so much happened in my personal life. When I was there, it was 10 years ago now, but it was such a juncture in my life. Living in another country and another culture, speaking another language nonstop really changes your brain. And my mom passed during that time. And so I think when you lose your mom in particular, I think you reference this also. Yeah. You really, someone told me you don't become an adult until you lose your mom. I don't know if that was the best advice, but it definitely changed my life and made me
agree with that.
Made me realize she was only 49, and so I really wanted to make sure that I was being thoughtful about how I spent my life and what I was, just doing things that I felt were meaningful and purposeful. So I finished grad school. I finished my Peace Corps service. I came back and finished grad school, and then I started working for the Forest Service, which had always been a goal because when I was a kid, I learned that Smokey Bear and I have the same birthday. And so it was a very silly reason to want to work for the Forest Service. But as I grew into an adult, I had all sorts of other reasons to want to work for an agency that supports it's a working landscape, but the whole premise is caring for the land and serving the people, and those are 2 things that ring very true and important for me. So it seemed like a natural fit as an agency for me. And when I was there, I met Caleb, my business partner, and he had bought 5 cows on Craigslist and started practicing regenerative agriculture, which was something that I had delved a little bit into during my grad school studies, and I started helping him out just by cow sitting and feeding hay every once in a while, that kind of thing. And then we started growing the herd and selling beef slowly but surely. And then we started the farmers markets and just started doing all sorts of things. It grew kind of precipitously, I think, which was amazing. People have been really supportive, and we lease all of our land. We don't own any of the land, and so at first we were just leasing 3 acres, and we're out there like building electric fence across 3 acres. And Caleb is fond of saying, like, we must have looked like idiots or just like very strange to people who don't necessarily know what electric fence is or why you would want to practice a rotational grazing. And then people being very friendly out here will ask questions and then say, oh, I might know a field that you could lease. And so slowly but surely we were able to gain more leases, and somehow here we are today, I guess. Both quit the Forest Service full time. Caleb actually has stepped back from Uncompahgre Farms, and he runs a ranch that's 130,000 acres in Meeker. And so his career has taken him in that direction, and mine, I'm sticking with the what we have here in Montrose and our beef business, and just raising the cattle here, and it's been pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's what a cool story coming into this industry. There's so many, unfortunately right now for a lot of producers that are people that want to get into ag, with land prices being what they are. And, there's a lot of challenges to getting into it. And I talk about this a little bit, too on the podcast, but, starting with 3 acres and, a few cows and then growing from there. And, I think a lot of the times, people that might want to do this say, well, I can't afford anything, or I don't have, just $2-3 million sitting in the bank. And, leasing can be such a great way. And I've been learning quite a bit over the last couple of years about how that can be, such a great starting point to be able to obviously have a piece of land to be able to graze your animals. But, you don't have to have a ton of capital to start. And, it's just finding and networking, and like you were mentioning, you start meeting people in the area, and, oh, I might have some, I have some land that your cows could graze, and then really educating those people on why it is important to have, ruminant animals on the land and what it does for the ecosystem and the wildlife and the plants and create biodiversity and all that stuff. So it's a really, really cool story. So are you running the farm by yourself right now?
Just me. Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. Good for you.
Thanks. I have to give full credit to Caleb. He was a very patient teacher, and we both, I think, were not too afraid to try stuff and be wrong and make mistakes. And I think that was really helpful in saying, as you mentioned, like, it is hard, or it can be intimidating to get into agriculture, and not coming from an agricultural background or not having a 5th generation ranch to inherit. It can be intimidating, but if you are just go for it. Just go, start small, or see what opportunity you might have. Like, if you can look at the world as a world of opportunities and not a world of hurdles, you'd be surprised where life will take you, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's amazing advice. A lot of times and I know I've done it for myself in the past, we cut ourselves short before we even try, and we talk ourselves out of it before we even try. So
yeah, we can spend a lot of time like thinking and dreaming and drawing plans,
right.
like robust garden plans, or as a kid, I drew my like ideal farm a lot.
Yeah.
And to finally just get in there and get your hands dirty, it's pretty awesome.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about Uncompahgre Farms, and you mentioned how you got started and whatnot, and I took this from your website because I thought it was really cool and just encompassed everything that you guys are doing. Your main goals, you wrote, improve the land through our grazing practices, raise cows the way they were meant to be raised, and reconnect folks to their food and with each other. So I just really loved those 3 points. I really felt like your website really encompassed all of that. So can you kind of just talk a little bit about why those 3 things are important to you and kind of what your vision behind it was?
Thank you. If you ever get an opportunity to take a holistic management course or anything like that, one of the things that they'll emphasize is the need to have a vision and a why. And I don't know that we knew necessarily that structure prior. I just, as a former English teacher, I think that it helped me for us to structure our why and to be able to share our story, but also like for ourselves on the hard days to know, okay, this is why we're doing this. And so when we were first drafting our website and all of that, we just talked about like what's important to us. And I think the caring for the land, as we had both worked for the Forest Service, because that was first and foremost, I think, why we think we're on Earth, is to do right by this world and leave it a little better than when we found it. And while the Forest Service does that as an agency, we had this opportunity to do that at maybe a smaller scale, but maybe it felt a little more in depth to be able to have the cows and improve the land directly, using rotational grazing and other practices. Those two things, I think, were really obvious to us. So I should premise all this by saying that a lot of this evolved. We started in 2019, but we really started growing in 2020. And everyone knows that was the year the world was shutting down and people were afraid of each other and wearing masks and not talking to each other. I mean, I understand why there was fear, but it also felt really sad and hard to see a lot of older people, especially around here, not have anyone to talk to in person, except for like we would be in the field irrigating and they would come to the fence, and that was the one time a day that they could see another human face and just say, hey, how's it going? Yeah. Sunny today. Just like those small pleasantries that keep people feeling connected. Right. So that third goal, I think, wasn't initially as obvious, and it's not necessarily something that feels tangible on a spreadsheet for financial viability or whatever of a business, but it's something that, especially to me, I think has come to the forefront in being just as valuable, if not like more important than the other two goals, because I think in doing this and recognizing that as one person, I can only take care of so much land and I can only do so much, but if I can share what I think is good stewardship and why I think taking care of the land and doing right by the animals is important, then other people might be able to grab onto that message and carry it forward. So then we can have more impact as a community. And so that's sort of how those three goals evolved.
Yeah, just to be able to have those two goals in mind, and then how cool is it to kind of have that third one organically evolve through different experiences and stuff. That's pretty neat.
Yeah, I think initially I hoped that we could sell beef at the farmers market, largely because at this point we had more cows and we were growing, but we hadn't really worked on the marketing side of things. And it seemed just logical to be a low stakes. We could do it on the weekends when we were still working in the office. Like we could work on the weekends and sell at the farmers market and just start to try to sell beef and be financially viable. And I just did not expect gaining this enormous sense of community. I had lived here for many years before we started working at the farmers market, and then all of a sudden your circle of friends grows immensely, because a farmers market is just for here anyways, it's really a hub of the community, which is amazing. You get this cross section of the entire community, people from all walks, all political spectrum. They'll go to different churches. They're not just from your church. They're not just from your office. They're not just from your dog park or whatever. Like they're from all over, and so you really gain a much greater sense of community. And every year we've added one more farmers market, so we've gotten to know other communities as well. And there's this idea with knowledge that knowledge is sticky, and the more you know, the more you can know. And I feel the same way with relationships. It's a marvelously small western slope, and the more people you know, the smaller it feels, and it's just lovely.
Yeah, and this is something I am really passionate about and I talk about on here too, is the importance of supporting your local farmer and your local rancher, and for us to be able to get out there at farmers markets or, wherever at different events. And what do I want to say? Like introducing yourself to people, an advocate. Yeah. And we can so easily be on the ranch all day, every day and never leave. For us at the ranch in Montana, we went to the farmers markets and a lot of people didn't really know about us. And, the owner had just started the farm a couple of years ago. We are in a location in town where not many can see it because you kind of have to drive through a neighborhood to get there and whatnot. So when we went to the farmers market, people were like, oh my gosh, I hadn't heard from you or heard about you before. And the coolest thing was to be able, like you were talking about, to meet people and build relationships and talk to people and educate them on the importance of why it's good to buy local beef, not just because, we want you to buy something, but because we're producing a quality product, a nutrient dense product that we really believe in. We want to tell you about it and we want to contribute to the community, so.
Yeah, exactly. Every year we try to make sure our interns spend some time at the farmers market. They're largely with the animals, but they don't necessarily think at first. They're like, oh, I guess I'll go to the farmers market, because they feel like it's intimidating and talking to people, and they just want to be out on the range. But then they're there and they're just like, wow, people are so like nice and grateful, and we're grateful too. It's just it's all the touchy feely like stuff that, but legitimately does touch your heart, and it keeps you going on the hard days. Right. Where you're like, I'm not in this alone. People understand why I'm doing this, and I'm doing something meaningful for them by providing healthy protein, and they value it and I value, like, it's just a good win-win.
Yeah. And it gives you a kind of a sense of purpose that's bigger than yourself, and what you're doing on the day-to-day. You're there, you're serving people. Could you talk a little bit about your kind of rotational grazing methods? Do you guys do like cell grazing? Do you do strip grazing? Do you do frequent moves? What do you guys kind of have going on?
So we lease all our fields. And the ground is all very different. On the Uncompahgre Plateau, we lease 2,200 acres, which is rugged country. It's this amazing. Out here, there's like 5 major ecosystems, and the ranch is a cross section of all of those ecosystems, which is rare. Often you'll get a lease that might just be sagebrush, or it might just be pinyon juniper. So it's really nice to have that variation, to be able to teach our interns, and also to be able to have different objectives for that landscape, where Gamble Oak, in most climate change models, it is the one ecosystem out here that in a hotter, drier climate, we expect to do increase its spread, whereas more sensitive ecosystems like aspen or sagebrush, some of the other ecosystems will have, they all have various, should I say, not threats, I don't want to be threatening, but just challenges in a hotter, drier climate. And so we might graze our cattle more intensively in those spots, whereas when we're down here in the valley in our fall, winter, and spring pastures, again, each of them is different, and we might strip graze some fields. We might just have a rotational pattern in like the field that they're currently in. They have been moved along through paddocks that are divided kind of along the topography, mostly along the topography. And all of this also will vary year by year. I think that what I've learned, and I still have so much more to learn, nature doesn't adhere to standardization. If that's something that we might want to systematize because it's easier for our brain to wrap around. But Will Winters, who has white oak pastures in Georgia, he has this great speech on something being complicated versus something being complex. And complicated is when something's like linear and our brains can kind of understand each piece, but ecosystems are complex and they have more parts than we even can begin to grasp. Like there's more to the soil universe than we understand right now. And all those parts have interconnections that we can't even begin to understand. And so what we can do to improve the land is try to do no harm, like fence out of riparian areas, that kind of thing. Right. And also just pay a really close attention and be adaptive. If we try something and it's not working, or it's working better than we thought, then to not be so stuck with our what our simple brains want to simplify life. So it's a long-winded answer because it's complex. Like to improve a landscape, even to improve a field, it takes, I think, mostly a lot of keen observation and just constant attention and awareness.
Yeah, no, you're so right. And it reminds me of I was just listening to or watching a YouTube video from Jim Garish. He had done like a speech at one of the regenerative conferences like a year or two ago, but he was talking exactly about that. We can get so stuck in the way that we want things done, and we've got to be open to being able to kind of change our ways around things. And he was talking to, I think at the time, a lot of ranchers that have been doing this their whole lives, but he gave the example of when we have the cows out there, it's more than just putting them out and then not seeing them for a week. It's like you got to, go out there and check them every day. And he was saying when that grass or that pasture field, whatever, is grazed, is when you think you can keep them on for one more day and you move them off. You don't leave them on for one more day. And when he said that, I even kind of had a little bit of a reaction, like, oh, like, could you just get a little bit more out, But he made such a good point. Like, no, if you think you can do one more day, then you move them the day before. It helps with the rest and, that pasture needs. Yeah. Just getting out of our own way.
Yeah. And being willing to change. And definitely. We do also, as I said, we lease all of our fields. And so our various landowners have goals too sometimes of thinning certain ecosystems, or for example, on the plateau, several buildings up there, and it could be fire prone, as I'm sure there's a natural fire cycle in a lot of Western ecosystems, and because of our suppression for so many years, a lot of that fire cycle is out of whack, and we might need to reset it to prevent a catastrophic wildfire. And that might look like a prescribed burn, that might look like thinning manually, like with machinery, or you can use the cattle sometimes to intensively graze. Right. Say a ring around a building, and that way you have a fire break that could help slow a fire, something like that. Yeah. So we, as part of our relationship with our landowners, we talk about their objectives. We talk about maybe options for how they can be accomplished. And then we try to follow through. Caleb has a lot of experience with, he was a hotshot with the Forest Service for a little while. And so he has a lot of experience with prescribed fire. So we've done a little bit of that, but mostly we try to use the cattle. And people, it's really awesome when you can accomplish an objective with the cattle that they didn't necessarily know could be accomplished, not necessarily knowing about electric fence or what cattle can do, and so it's pretty fun to work on specific goals.
Yeah, and you mentioned too about leasing and having your goals, and then also the person, the owners of the land having their goals. I've talked a little bit about this, and I'm super curious to know too, as someone for me in the next couple of years, looking to lease some land as well. What do you think are the biggest challenges? How do you kind of approach it when you are talking with a landowner who maybe they're like, yeah, I'd like you to bring your cattle in, but not really sure, or they might be a little on the fence, or what are kind of some things that you do to kind of get them where they kind of understand?
Yeah, and I there's some quote that I'm probably going to missay, but it's seek first to understand and then be understood. And so for some of our landowners, we might have a long-term goal, and it might take us a few years of working together to get there, of like when we can use it or that kind of thing, because they might have a perception. For example, for a hunting property, there might be a perception that the cows would disturb the area, and so they might not want them in when it's hunting season, if that's that landowner's like goal for that property. And for example, by accident, a neighbor's cows broke in to that property and were there during the hunting season. We had already brought our cows down because they weren't at a spot where they wanted us to have our cows up there in the hunting season. So we took our cows off when we had agreed to, and then it happened that the neighbors' cows were up there all during hunting season, and they caused no disturbance. It didn't impact their hunting. So it was sort of a happy chance that helped bring that landowner along. Yeah, and so that's really serendipitous that it worked out. Now we are more, I guess, not aligned, but it makes it a lot more viable for us to bring our cows all the way up there, where it's been a challenge for the past few years to bring them down so early and miss so much of the grazing season, I guess.
What have you noticed on that hunting ground specifically that the cows have helped with?
I want to say we have done some photo points of our grass height, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that in bringing the cattle on and also grazing them quickly, but not leaving them on for the whole grazing season, it's helped like fertilize the land, but also let the grasses recover. I also want to say that I think we've only been there 3 years. And realistically, I would think that, well, I want to say we're doing a good job. I also am realistic that it's probably too soon to say long-term what impacts we've had, I guess.
Yeah.
It's just, that's the thing about improving soil especially, is that you don't necessarily immediately see results. And there are it's the complexity of an ecosystem, that there are so many factors that are going to impact it's not a lab experiment,
right?
Where you can control the rainfall and the cold temperature, when the first freeze comes, all that. Like, it's such a complex system.
It's a great point too, because we always kind of look for that instant gratification, and sometimes it just doesn't happen. And depending on, like you said, there's so many different factors, some that we don't even see, or what happened on that land before, if it was completely depleted 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, for 10, 15, 20 years, that's going to take a heck of a lot more time to restore than just getting in there with 1 or 2 grazing periods. And like you said, the weather, depending on how the weather is that year, and rainfall and all that kind of stuff. So
last year in particular, we had an incredible amount of snow, and then we got good rains, which out here in the West, like, it was a banner year. It was awesome, precip wise. Our irrigated grounds down here in the valley are a different story in how we can measure success, I guess. They are also complex, but we have at least a little bit more impact of grazing cattle, thus fertilizing naturally with their manure, and leaving rest period with the consistent watering. I think the change that you can make it can be faster. Still not instant gratification, and I don't look for that because I just don't think it's realistic. But
right.
But it's just a different story.
Well, it sounds like you guys are doing some really amazing things, you know.
It's incredibly interesting constantly.
Yeah, great. And I wanted to ask you too a little bit about your Cowpoke-palooza. So could you tell us a little bit about that event? And you held it the first time last year, right?
2022.
2022. Okay, yeah. So if you could just explain that a little bit, that'd be great.
So as I mentioned, our third goal of connecting people to their food and to each other was sort of an evolution with Uncompahgre Farms. We have grown with that goal as people and as a company. And the Cowpoke-palooza, we always had kind of a barbecue at the end of the season to thank our landowners, our interns, and just everyone that we had a chance to work with. Our customers, people, we just would have a big barbecue, sort of a harvest thank you. And they built this beautiful new amphitheater right on the river here in Montrose. And Caleb was like, hey, what if we host a bigger thank you? And as I often do when Caleb has these giant ideas, and he's sort of the visionary, and I have been sort of the nuts and bolts person. And so sometimes when he has these giant ideas, in my simple way, I kind of balk, and I'm like, that sounds terrifying, and like a lot of work that I've never done, but we'll try it. And so we did it that first year, and it was awesome. It was just so fun to bring so many different people together. We had 3 bands that we really liked, and it was awesome to bring them to Montrose and share them with everyone. And we had 2 speakers, our county commissioner and Janie Van Winkle, who was the head of the Colorado Cattlemen's Association, and she spoke beautifully on bringing people together of all types. It's something that she's worked on her ranch with in working with the Forest Service, and just bringing all the different stakeholders who enjoy that Forest Service allotment, all the recreationists that come across and encounter cattle, that kind of thing. And she's done a really great job of bringing all those stakeholders together and sharing each other's stories and goals and figuring out how to work together. And so that's why we had invited her to speak, because that is sort of our entire premise also, that we need to have relationships with people who on the surface might seem different from us, but really we have all these common values that are way more important and run way deeper. And so we will keep going with that tradition this year, and host the Cowpoke-palooza again in October 12th, and just keep trying to bring people together and build those relationships with each other. It's going to be really fun.
That sounds like a lot of fun. Do you have speakers lined up already, or are you still working on it?
I'm still working on it, but the person that I asked is amazing. So we'll hope she'll be able to do it. Announce later this spring. And we're also going to host a film festival, which is something that I have wanted to do for a very long time. As I enjoy, we have an amazing soil conference here in Montrose every year, and a water summit, and just all these different opportunities where people deep in ag can get together and talk about how awesome ag is. And I love that sharing, and I love, it's always so like restorative and inspiring to be with all those amazing people who have so much experience and know so much. And sometimes though, I want to expand that conversation to include people who might just tangentially experience agriculture through the food that they eat, but that is essential. Like we are all dependent on. I think agriculture is just like a foundation of civilization, and we are all dependent on it. And so if we all know a little bit more about it, even if we don't necessarily want to farm or be farming all the time, if we know more about it, and we can know better how to support it. And so that is the idea behind the film festival, is that we will have local farms share their stories through film, which is, I think, a medium that's very accessible to people who might not want to go to a deeply scientific soil conference where you're talking nematodes and but people can share. Local farms will share their stories through film, and so we'll host that next February. Just like every day you get a chance to work towards we get a chance to work towards those 3 goals: taking care of the land, raising the cats the way they should be raised, and connecting people. So just keep at it.
And what a cool idea when you talked about that film festival and bringing people in that might not be wanting to get into ag, or maybe they don't want to start their own ranch, but they depend on food. So I think there's a big push now for people, and I've seen a lot more over the last couple of years, people are starting to really care about where their food comes from and really care about what they're putting in their bodies and feeding their families, and trying to kind of look outside the box a little bit and say, hey, how can we reach these people just a little bit outside of ag, or just across the line there, and that will be really awesome.
Yeah, it should be fun. It's I agree. It does feel like I hope that we've reached a tipping point, or maybe we're approaching the tipping point where people care more about where their food comes from, and understand the impacts on our own health, on our environment, the impacts of our environment on our health, and just how impactful sustainably grown food can be on all of those issues. Those are our small contributions.
Very cool, Brittany. So just to kind of wrap up a little bit, I'd love to ask what are your goals and your visions for this next year for Uncompahgre, obviously, Cowpoke-Palooza and the film festival. What are your goals for this year, and what are you currently working on and hope to see in the business?
So for this year, I hope that we can learn a lot from these 2 events and just all of our whole farmers market season. I learned so much every day. This will be my first year on my own, and I am eager to see how that goes. I hope that I feel set up for success. I've learned a lot, and I feel like I have a lot of support from our community. So, and I will make mistakes, and I will learn a lot from each of them. Over the long term, 10-year goals kind of things, we have interns every year, and working with kids has always been near and dear to my heart. I received a lot of mentorship and amazing teaching over the years, and I hope to pay that forward. And it's always a joy to work with students too. They're so full of energy and excitement and new information, whereas my schooling now is 10 years old, and so I try to stay abreast of new information, but it's someone who's just going through school might have information that I don't have yet, and so it's a constant feedback of learning. I have some family members with mental health issues, and I have noticed that they just do really well working outside. And so I have this vague idea in my mind, and I know it's not original to me. I know that there are people who host patients on ranches or in outdoor settings, and there's equine therapy and all of those types of things. And I in 10 years, I would like to be in some kind of space like that, where we can focus on a community that I think people who have mental health issues, it seems like every family, every person knows someone or has themselves been impacted by it. And so I I think I would like to work in that area and help get Uncompahgre Farms in some way to help with that.
That's incredible. I mean, like you said, I think that it's something that, you know, our parents' generations, you didn't really talk about mental health at all.
Totally.
And, you know, we're starting to get to the point where we are talking about it a little bit more and kind of bringing up awareness about it and things like that. And like you said, I think every single person that you meet, whether they've experienced it themselves or they know somebody that's close to them that has. And I also really feel very close to that as well, because I started my work with horses. I kind of got into ag through horses. So, you know, for me, I know they've completely changed my life. And then just being outside, and the cows are incredible for mental health too. And
yes, cow counseling is legit.
It really is.
Everybody that I have come out, like people ask us for tours all the time, so we'll go to the field and talk and sit with the cows, and sometimes they'll come up and like lick someone's hair or something, and you just see their faces are just like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And they're just cows are so restful, they're just very peaceful, and it just feels very, it's nice to share that with people, I guess.
It's hard to explain, but it kind of brings you back like home, whether you're on horseback or you're just in a field with the cows walking around or something. It feels like, okay, wow, this feels like innate. This feels like home, and we are part of the ecosystem. I think we've gotten really far away from being in touch with nature, and I think there's definitely more of a push, you know, that we're starting to realize like, hey, something's not right here. And mental health, bring it right back to it, you know, getting close to the land and getting close to your food and being outside in nature and things. I mean, those are, our ancestors did it every day, and we've slowly gotten into, you know, offices and in front of computers, which there's amazing things that have come from that, obviously, but just kind of getting back to that natural world, I think, is so important.
Amen. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So, well, cool, Brittany. So, what words of wisdom or advice that you would want to give people, for instance, who might be wanting to get into agriculture in whatever avenue that might be? If they say, hey, I want to work with cows, or, you know, I eventually want to start a ranch, or I'm just interested, you know, what are pieces of wisdom that you can offer people to kind of get started?
I would just say try something. Don't walk in faith, not in fear, and just try something. You don't necessarily have to go out and buy cows and have no idea what to do with them. You can start small. Chickens are the gateway livestock. My sister-in-law has bunnies and rabbits, and so she raises rabbits. She also like volunteers once a week at a stable, and that's what she fills her cup. And her like getting engaged with agriculture, that's enough for her. And it took trying that to realize it. And so whatever you have in your heart to try, just do it. You can do it. I believe in you.
That's great.
There and just talk to people, like go meet people. If you just want to know where your vegetables come from, go up to someone at your farmer's market and be like, hey, can I come over and see how you grow vegetables? And I don't know anyone at a farmer's market who's gonna be like, no. Right. They're all like, yes, that's awesome. Come over this day and we'll get dirty. Wear clothes to get dirty.
Yeah. From my experience, every rancher that I've ever met or farmer that I've met have just been super nice in that instance. Oh my gosh, yeah, hey, come on over, like, and want to show you what they're doing. And there's, you know, there's bad eggs everywhere, but I think for the most part that everybody's just so nice, and they really do like want to bring you in on what they're doing, you know.
Yes, agreed. It's a wonderful community.
It is really. Okay, so last question. What is the best piece of advice that you've ever been given?
I did my Peace Corps service in Nicaragua, and one of the phrases there, which I heard constantly because I first got there and I was like, I want to do everything, and everyone in the community needs this, and people would tell me all the ideas that they had and all the things that they wanted to do, and so I was like, okay, we're gonna do all those things, and what my host mom and what people would tell me a lot, and it was just just a very helpful phrase. It's grano por grano se llena el buche de la gallina, which means like grain for grain, the chicken fills her crop. And it's just
That's
the
beautiful.
idea that little by little, it means big change. I think that's just been a theme of my life. And that when I first started teaching, I thought I was going to change the whole world and every single one of my students was going to love reading. And as you get older, you recognize the world is very big, and you can either become jaded and give up on your dreams, or you can just realize, like, oh, I can make small changes, and those small changes will add up, and that's awesome. Then I will have lived a life worth living. There's a quote: "If your lifetime's work can be accomplished in your lifetime, you're not thinking big enough." I think both of those go hand in hand, in that you are one person, and you can accomplish a lot by doing small things.
I don't have anything to add there. That was great. That was some amazing piece of advice. And I love that quote. Could you say that again? What's that? What's the language?
Oh, it's just Spanish. Grano por grano se llena el buche de la gallina.
Okay, yeah, that's beautiful. I love that.
It's I lived in a very rural part of Nicaragua, and so a lot of the idioms are farm based.
Okay, yeah, no, that's beautiful.
And everyone pretty much has chickens. Everyone. So there's a lot of you can learn a lot from chickens.
Yeah, you definitely can. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you, taking the time to talk with me. And I know that our listeners are going to really enjoy hearing this episode. And where can people find you? How can people support you? With whether it's Cowpokepalooza or even if they're interested in an internship with you, where can they find you?
People can reach out. Our email is uncofarm, farm @gmail.com. And I do love hearing from people. It's whatever people are doing in their own community. If I can be of support, just offering lessons learned or anything like that, it is so inspiring to see to hear what other people are doing, and just it feels very nice to have that additional community of just exchange, I guess.
Well, this has been great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we're really, really excited to kind of see where you go and what's down the road for you this year. So
likewise, thank you for putting on a podcast. It's really awesome. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and they are invaluable in learning. So thank you for adding to the community. That's awesome.
Of course. Thank you, Brittany.